But some new ingredients were tossed into the weather cocktail: hail and snow. So far, the worst of the weather has been in the south and west. This report by our South of England correspondent Adrian Britton.
This will be the third consecutive night that power workers have been out attempting to restore electricity supplies in the southwest. In Gloucestershire, towns and villages filmed by the ITN helicopter became islands in the floods. Communities virtually marooned by the worst storms for a decade. Not since the hurricane of '87 can they recall anything so severe. Yet again, the southwest has borne the brunt of the Atlantic storms. Hundreds of trees have been felled by winds which reached 115 miles per hour. Exposed areas like here at Woolacombe in North Devon have taken the full force of the winds, and the damage that those winds have caused are clearly seen on top of this hotel. The roofs of 2 bedrooms have been ripped off, rooms which have been extensively damaged, a hotel which was due to open in 2 weeks' time.
Extremely upsetting after all the refurbishment we've been doing. Well, as you can see, roof's gone and we're going to have to start all over again.
The full extent of the damage seen here from the air. Roof beams fell onto cars parked below. Amazingly, there were no injuries. But in Cardiff, an 83-year-old woman died today after a flower stall canopy was blown into her. And in West Tavistock, a middle-aged couple were injured after a tree and power cable crashed onto their car. They were airlifted to hospital. In North Devon, they showed me the power of the hurricane-force winds. This mobile home, weighing over 2 tons, was ripped from its chains and thrown into a neighbouring caravan. What was it all like when this happened?
Oh, it was a nightmare, really frightening. It really was frightening. I mean, we could hardly stand, but I mean, there's nothing you could do.
And with more gales forecast, the prospect of further structural damage seems inevitable. Adrian Britton, News at 10, North Devon.
A grim and ultimately successful battle was fought all day to stop the sea breaking through to Selsey in West Sussex for the second time. As quickly as the waves tore down a protecting shingle bank, bulldozers built it up again. ITN's John Draper was there.
Tonight, dumper trucks were still building up sea defences after the weekend flooding in West Sussex. All morning, dozens of trucks moved in tons of shingle in a bid to hold back strong seas, whipped up by gale-force winds. But under a heavy pounding, even the strengthened shingle bank began to give. Engineers examining it found it crumbling beneath their feet. Bulldozers worked at plugging the gaps against seas, searching for every weak point. Behind the shingle bank, the mopping up operation from Sunday continued. At a cafe damaged by the flooding, the owners showed me what had happened.
The water had come up, you can see the level there.
It doesn't get to a state of it's like a tidal wave coming that you've got to get out the way of. It's just a gentle, you know, it just gets deeper and deeper. You've got plenty of time to get out of it.
It's 3:40 in the afternoon, 25 minutes before high tide, and already the sea wall, despite the reinforcements, is taking a fierce battering. The shingle bank was breached, but not enough to cause severe flooding. Tonight, work gangs are restoring the damage and building the bank high again ahead of tomorrow's early tide. John Draper, News at 10, West Sussex.
Well, just how bad is the damage? What are the storms going to cost? The insurance companies today ventured an estimate of £500 million and said it could mean higher household premiums. Our Consumer Affairs correspondent Caroline Kerr reports.
So the actual shed itself, you said the roof actually come off the shed?
The buck stops here.
Right, OK, that's gone next door, is it?
For insurance companies, storms and high winds mean massive payouts. All day they've been inundated with emergency calls. In the worst affected areas, they've been sending out representatives to record the damage and assess the cost of repairs. This church in Devon lost its roof in high winds.
That's got to be the priority, is to get the building weatherproof.
The advice is universal: get emergency repairs done as soon as possible. There's no doubt this harsh weather is causing concern to insurance companies. They say if the trend of bad weather continues, insurance premiums will go up. Weather-related insurance claims have increased tenfold since 1960, and the changing climate could be responsible for this. Flooding and storm-damaged property now account for 29% of all insurance claims. And insurance premiums for household buildings have increased by 65% since 1987. Most people remember the havoc wreaked in the hurricane of '87. That resulted in insurance claims of £1.6 billion. But the biggest bill followed flooding throughout Britain 8 years ago, when claims amounted to £2.6 billion. By comparison, this storm is relatively minor, with damage estimated at £500 million. In Wales, where flooding has left homeowners in disarray, this storm might not seem so minor, but it's not enough alone to push premiums up.
It's unlikely to have a serious impact on premiums unless we get a really bad January and February, cold weather, freezing pipes, more storms and floods. But insurance companies are in the business of smoothing over a long period of time, and so one single incident doesn't immediately mean premiums must go up.
But with snow setting in this afternoon in the Midlands and more promised for tomorrow, this winter's cocktail of bad weather is clearly not over yet. Caroline Kerr, News at 10.
The Northern Ireland Secretary Mo Mowlam has been to Ireland, where the Princess is buried, and tour a museum celebrating her life. Colin Baker reports from Althorpe.
Each day more fresh flowers arrive, but the Althorpe House main gates remain firmly closed to a public still mourning their princess. But come the summer, 150,000 people will be given the opportunity to not only tour the house and grounds, but to see the island where Diana is buried and the memorial to her erected on it. It won't be free though. The telephone hotlines for the public to buy tickets have been jammed all day, 600 people an hour trying to make bookings. At £9.50 for a single adult ticket, a visit to Althorpe in July and August will be as expensive as visiting any other stately home. The organisers say, though, it's not expensive. Any profit after expenses have been deducted will go to the Diana Memorial Fund. Could be said it's an awful lot of money to ask people to come to pay homage, to pay tribute.
Not really. When you compare what the other places are charging of similar stature, and you're getting a lot more for your money than those places, you're seeing not only the island where Diana's been buried, but also the house is open to the public and a museum that's been created for Diana.
That museum will be in a stable block now being converted. The Spencer tiara will be on show, and it's hoped that Diana's wedding dress will also be displayed, along with scores of early family and chartered photographs. Althorpe will be open through July and August, but people without a previously booked ticket will not be allowed entry. Colin Baker, News at 10, Northamptonshire.
Daniel Arap Moy was sworn in for his 5th term jobless, but will also be expanded to include the older, long-term unemployed. Those who have been out of work for more than 6 months will be offered a job, training or full-time education. A British coach driver was fined by a French... The Beetle made its debut at the Detroit Auto Show in America today, 60 years after the first of the line appeared on the roads of Germany. The shape is familiar, but the new model has its engine at the front. ITN's James Mates reports.
Welcome to the new Beetle world. Come.
The Beetle is back, the return of one of the great brands in the history of motoring. It's grown up a bit. Unveiled today in Detroit, it's a child of the 90s, but recognizably the offspring of a parent that so graced the 60s. It's a little bigger, but the bug-eyed headlamps are still there. The engine's moved from the boot to the bonnet and is now cooled by water, rather than by the fan that made the original so distinctive on the ears. The Beetle's never been out of production since the 1936 launch of the first prototype. Within 2 years, Adolf Hitler had embraced the people's car as one of the triumphs of his regime, but it was a good enough car to survive its associations with the Nazis. And by 1955, the 1 millionth Beetle was rolling off the production line, soon to become more cult than car. The Germans haven't built Beetles since 1978, but when they stopped, the Mexicans took over. The last regular imports to Europe, though, were in 1985. The long wait for Beetle fans in Britain will be over when the cars arrive next year. But will people pay the £15,000 asking price?
People might look at it and say, it's a bit of a joke, it's a bit of a jokey car, and when somebody's spending $15,000, they might want it to look quite serious and quite, like it costs $15,000 really.
If they do, they'll be buying into a fully fledged family, 4 generations, spanning more than 60 years. James Mates, News at 10 in the United States.
That's the way the news looks tonight. We're back tomorrow.